SPED 2010 students. I hope everyone had a great week last week. I know with the the module 7 that we had 2 weeks. So this week, we're going to be moving into module 8, which is behavioral supports. Now, this is not a 2-week. I mean, you could take a whole semester on behaviors, but this nonetheless is a very important module that we're going to be working on. So we're going to talk about what you're going to be doing. You will really hopefully gain a lot out of this chapter and out of the textbook as well as the resources available to you. So let's just go ahead and get started. I want to first open up by looking at our schedule so you can kind of see where we are. So April 7th through 13th, this is where we are. You are working on behavioral supports. We're going to learn about functional behavior assessment and why that's important in the classroom, and how do you collect data, how do you really figure out what's going on with a student. So then you see here that the following week, which is next week, we're going to be working on Module 9. And then lastly, Module 10. Now, if you'll notice, Module 10 is a 2-week period of lessons because there's a lot going on. Module 10 is all about how do you implement effective instructional practice. And under that umbrella is going to be our co-teaching lesson plan and presentation. This is something that a lot of you have already sent me your co-teaching strategy, as well as if you're working with someone or alone and what methods you are using. So if you haven't sent that to me, please go ahead and email it to me. I need to know what you're presenting on. So the co-teaching plan is embedded underneath this umbrella of effective instructional practices because the strategies you're choosing are evidence-based research practices used in the classroom with co-teaching. Also, you'll notice here your service learning journal and closing documents, as well as your service learning written paper due by April 27th. So anytime April 21st, you could even send it now. I have some teachers sending me their closing documents. I just want to premise real quick that whenever you are doing your service learning journal and written analysis, that is what will be put into our course. There's a Dropbox. The closing documents are going to either be emailed to me or sent in actual mail. So I have emailed everyone with the address of where it needs to go to if they're mailing it out, or if you're emailing what email address I want you to send it to. And the mentor teacher will be doing this. You do not submit it. Now, if she gives the papers to you in a sealed envelope, I'm more than happy for you to bring it by and drop it in my office, but it must be sealed. Otherwise, they will either mail it or email it to me. So that's one thing to keep in mind. Also, you'll notice during this time of our Module 10 that we have makeup work due by May 1st. Now, if you go back to the syllabus, you are allowed to make up a course module assignment and a quiz. So all that makeup work should be due by May the 1st. Also, and I'll send another email out talking about our wrapping up end of the term activities, or closing activities, which would include your post-test and your course feedback. And then after that, we'll have finals week. So just to kind of get a little bit of projection into where we're going, we're kind of winding down. We don't have much left of the semester. But let's go ahead and get back into our Module 8. So as I mentioned, Module 8 is all about our behavioral supports. This is so important in any classroom, especially in inclusive classrooms. So we're looking at how do you meet the needs of the students when you have behavioral issues, right? And when we're talking about creating interventions and support, these are going to be for students who have exceptionalities with behavior disorder, right? Or something is going on. So we call it challenging behavior. Challenging is something that happens a lot and actually is very disruptive, right? So not just something where they every once in a while get in trouble. This has to be something that's challenging, right? So with challenging behaviors, students also may struggle academically, socially. So there's a lot of things that interrupted in their point of development. So it's important when they're exhibiting these behaviors that you are able to intervene, right, and try to understand what's going on, receive more information, and come up with an intervention that would be able to support them. Okay, so that's really the overview of what we're looking at in Module A. And as I mentioned, you're not going to learn every single thing about behavior with one module. You can do a whole course on just behavior alone. So our objectives for this specific module is to really describe characteristics of challenging behaviors, right? And remember, whenever we're describing them, they have to be measurable, observable terms that we're using. And you're going to learn about how to collect data, how to be able to create a hypothesis of what you think is going on. And when you collect data, that's our measurable, observable way that we can put that in terms. Now, you also are going to identify strategies to reinforce appropriate behaviors, right? Or reduce negative or unwanted, unproductive behaviors. So we have to replace those by teaching them new behaviors and skills, right? And again, we're going to coincide with universal design for learning principles. You're going to describe teacher-led and student-initiated mediation and explain the importance of collaboration with colleagues and parents to support these pro-social skills you're looking for. And then lastly, summarize different ways to meet the behavioral needs of diverse students to create positive social learning environments. So all of these module objectives are going to help us meet these course objectives here that we have listed. So here are the keywords and concepts. Now, these keywords and concepts are not only coming out of our textbook, Chapter 11, inside of our Teaching in Today's Inclusive Classrooms. They're also going to be coming out of the resources as well as our extra textbook that I put there as a resource for you. So there's lots of different terms you're going to see here, but they're not all coming out of the textbook. So make sure that you look at those. It helps you to understand what you're reading. And then how are we connecting what we're doing to the standards? So we're connecting them to the teacher in task preparation standards, where we look at learner development, learning environment, professional learning, ethical practices, as well as leadership and collaboration. And then with our connection to Council for Exceptional Children, we're going to be looking at learner development, individual learning differences, learning environments, assessment, and again, that's that collecting data, that specific piece when we are trying to support and create behavior interventions. And then lastly, instructional planning and strategies. Okay, so for the reading and resources, you are going to be reading Chapter 11 in the Teaching in Today's Inclusive Practices, but also I have the PDF for the textbook, A Teacher's Guide to Special Education. I want you to read Chapter 7 because this also goes along with the textbook, right? So it's talking about how do you teach students desired behaviors? What is some of the reasons for this underlying behavior? And it goes into what the different types of way to observe and record behavior, which is going to be helpful when you're completing your assignment. Okay, and then what do you do with the data? And then also another form, which we'll be talking about, is the ABC observation and how that can help you when you're trying to support them. And then lastly, it talks about the PBIS and the functional behavior assessment frameworks when we're trying to address challenging behavior. So this actually is a really great resource. So make sure that you're looking at that. Other resources available, obviously, is a textbook, PowerPoint, and textbook outline. I did put up here for you to look at a PowerPoint, which I thought would be helpful for you. That goes along with what we were just talking about with the Teacher's Guide to Special Education. So this PowerPoint I put together dives a little bit more into how do you define the problem behavior and how do you do a functional behavior assessment and implement the behavior plan. So I think this is another wonderful resource to you. And it walks you step by step how do you actually conduct the functional behavior assessment. And then the other resource I gave you was defining manifestation determination when we're talking specifically about school discipline. And again, remember, they were first introduced with IDEA when we had those amendments in 1997, but they're a little bit more simplified when we had the revision in 2004. But it's important for you to be able to know that. So that is a resource for you. Okay, so what about your assignments? What are you going to be doing this week? How are you being assessed? Well, I have a Module 8 quiz that you will be taking that's over this information. So again, that will close on Sunday, April 13th. I do have a really neat little Kahoot quiz review to give you some feedback to test your knowledge about what you're learning. It's not assessed or linked to a grade, but again, it's a great resource for you to use to study with. So make sure you use that link. The two things that I will be looking at is first you will be completing the IRIS module, this one specifically on functional behavior assessment here. So make sure that you do that and complete it. Now, once you have completed and went through the whole module, you're going to answer the questions 1 through 7 and you're going to submit them to Dropbox, okay? Make sure when you're submitting, I've had some issues with students, they're submitting documents, they're coming up blank on my end, so make sure it's an accessible document, especially if you're using something like a Chromebook or a iMac or MacBook. That's where we're having issues. So just make sure that it is a PDF document that's accessible. Okay, so that's one part that you will be submitting. The second one, we're going to think of it like practice, right? Because you're going to read about doing behavioral, functional behavior assessments. How do you record behavior? How do you collect data? But I want you to have some practice with this. So what you're going to do is you're going to click on where it says IRIS Case Study Center Recording. And I put step-by-step what I want you to do. The first thing you're going to do is read the case study unit that talks about measuring behavior, which is here. Okay, so I want you to read through this. Specifically, I want you to focus on where you collect data. So this would start on page 4, and I want you to go specifically look at event recording and interval recording, because those are the sections where you're going to be practicing. So that's what I would look at. After you look at that, you're going to watch a video that says frequency and interval recording. Okay, so you're going to watch this video. Now, as you're watching this video, I want you to look at these guiding questions, right? When you were looking at the IRIS case study and you were looking at collecting data, right, you were trying to target that behavior, right? So when you look specifically at frequency recording, right, what is the rate? So how many times is this behavior occurring in a certain amount of time, like within a 5-minute period? This video is going to walk you through. Now, this is just a short video clip, and there's an event recording form that's attached. And what this is going to do is going to see how many times the student's exhibiting this behavior. And you're going to hear a beep in the video. That's intervals. That means at 20 seconds, every 20 seconds, you're going to hear a beep. Okay, that's to help you when you're collecting data, interval data. So again, going back to that case study unit where we're specifically talking about how you measure data, that's going to be very helpful. After you do that, you're going to complete the practice data sheet. And I have it here for you. Okay, this is, I included an example here for you, but I do want you to have your own sheet when you're going to fill in about practicing data, right? So you'll see, again, you're going to complete both frequency, how many times using tallies that this happened, and then how many, then you will figure out interval, right? And tell me exactly in those 20 seconds how many times did that happen. We could say within 5 minutes it happened 6 times, but you have to break it down a little bit more when we're talking about interval recording. Okay, so that's in there. It is a lot, but again, if you go through and you use the IRIS case study module, you use the unit about measuring this data, right, and you watch the video and you use practice sheet, it's going to help you become more familiar and more comfortable collecting data. And that's what I want you to get out of this assignment. I want you to be able to understand, how do you do a functional behavior assessment? How do I use different recording measures, right, for measuring behavior? So really, I only want you to concentrate on frequency and interval and have practice with that. So as I mentioned, it is a practice sheet, but I still want to see what you've come up with. So you are going to complete the data sheet, which I have the link here for you. Okay, this is your data sheet. The other one was an example, so you can get an idea of what I'm looking for and how to do it. So once you do that, you are going to submit it to Dropbox along with your IRIS module assessment questions. I will give you feedback on it, but I'm not going to connect it to your grade. Your grade will come from the IRIS module assessment, but this is just the practice, and I do want to see that you're using it. I do want to say that the PowerPoint presentation in the resources section for Module 8 can really be helpful when you're completing this data sheet, so please make sure you look at that. All right, I hope that you take a lot away from this module, and as always, if you're in the middle of doing the data sheets and you're confused or you need help, please feel free to reach out. I'm more than glad to help you with that. But I hope everyone has a great week. Until next time, take care.